I am delighted that we have another conversation with someone we met along the way.
Yeah, I mean, besides me.
There's few other people that matter besides you, but I think Jamie McGonnigal is definitely one of those people.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Like, there are some really funny experiences I've had with Jamie. He's a hilarious actor and a hilarious person.
Yes.
But also, like, it's been so many years since I've actually seen him.
Right, I know.
Right?
Because we're old.
Yes. I mean,
not Jamie. Jamie's not old.
Jamie
but
is
we are
not
old.
No. I am definitely excited about having our conversation with Jamie today. Yeah, that's one of the lucky things about being in this business is that we meet so many interesting people, we work with so many creative people, and it doesn't really matter how long it's been since we've seen them or worked with them or whatever. I feel like we, because we've experienced things that are kind of similar sometimes in this crazy business we're in.
For sure.
We can just pick up and chat and catch up as if we, just saw each other last week, and that's what I'm looking forward to today.
Absolutely. One of the things that stands out in my memory of working with Jamie, I was directing at NYAV Post, Mike Nicholas's studio, and every session I had with him, and it was definitely more than a few shows that we worked on together, but yeah, there was always laughter.
Yes. Usually
sometimes at my expense, but I'm cool with that.
You beat me to it. Well,
all right. Well, let's not wait any longer. Let's get right to it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Welcome to The Heart of the Cards, a conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what we're dealt.
Hey, this is Dan Green.
And Eric Stuart.
And this is episode 21 of The Heart of the Cards. And we are so fortunate to have Jamie McGonnigal with us today.
Jamie, how are you?
I am wonderful. How are you guys?
Good. This is exciting. I have to say that one of the things that I think about the minute your name is mentioned, and I hope that people go and look up this performance, because to me it is one of my favorites of any thing that I've directed or experienced with an actor, and that's your performance on Viva Piñata.
Oh, God, I loved that show. It was so much fun, and you were great directing that too. I talk about that, on the rare occurrences that I'm on panels nowadays. But I know how challenging it can be to direct something that's not necessarily a dub, and we were, you were kind of forced to direct people out of time. Obviously, we're not all in the studio at the same time. And just being able to get the humor of it and imagine what someone else was going to read, or how someone else was going to read their line, and just how funny that was. I was the part of a two-headed snake named Teddington Twingersnaps, and the other half of the snake.
I'm hearing this in the context of like an AA meeting.
Yeah.
Hi, Trevington.
Hi, Teddington. Hi, Hudson.
Right.
Hello, Hudson. And the other half of the snake, I've never actually met in person, but she's apparently one of my college friends' sister-in-law.
That's so
which
funny.
I found out 2 years ago. I was like, no way. So.
Well, what was it? God. The only reason I started with that, and we're going to go back to the beginning of Jamie's life story, I wanted to jump to that spot only because that gave me, that's sort of my first real interaction with you. And that, because it wasn't a dub and it was, here's the lines on the scripts and let's act. You have the freedom to say it the way you want to with, my direction, of course, but whatever. I got a sense of who you were based on your sense of humor. And and that's why I think I was like, oh yeah, Jamie's one of my people. Like the comedy is there, the quick wit. I'm enjoying this dynamic, this friendship. It really was like a great introduction to a small part of your talent, just a piece of who you are, but it was a key piece for me.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
I think also that you get revealed as a director as well, right? It's a conversation.
Sure, that was our
and I think Jamie will agree with me that a lot of the funniness of Viva Piñata came through because of how well you absorbed Mel Brooks.
Oh yes,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, without a doubt.
Oh yeah. I mean I always will tell you who I am borrowing from or influenced by. There's no problem with that. I mean some of
no, not at all
that Borscht
no, I mean that
silliness
as a
and yeah but
absolutely
but
not everybody gets it.
No, and that is a bond that I have with most of my friends. Like that kind of humor really is a sign of we're going to get along. We you understand the joke. But yeah, so what I would love to start and of course we've already started, but what I would love to start our conversation with Jamie is, so that's where I met you. That's where I know you. But can you give me a little bit about the beginning? Like, what was as we've used before in our sort of Joseph Campbell template, your call to adventure? What made you want to become a performer?
That's a great question. I was at it from a really young age. Our church, I grew up Unitarian. We are the ones who address our prayers to whom it may concern. It was a really great way to grow up, honestly, because it was just very accepting, very nurturing. Our Sunday school was going to mosques, going to synagogues, going to Catholic churches, and kind of picking and choosing the things that we liked, that we could believe in, and we could always take that back to the Unitarian Church, and no one was going to judge you, and believe what you wanted to, and kind of build your own belief system. And I always appreciated that. But they would do these one night only musicals where they do basically three, like a kid's musical that was half-hour long, and then 2-hour-long snippets of like a Broadway musical, with all the church members participating. And I did Peter Pan, I think, when I was like 6 or 7.
Wow.
And I was Michael the little kid, and I was hooked. The second, I knew I could stand on stage and someone would clap for me for doing that. Yeah. And I could start like being funny and goofy and people would clap for that. I was pretty hooked. And then I started doing musicals, like community theater musicals, when I was about 10 or 11. And from then on, there was basically no turning back.
So
wow.
So because I remember, yes, the musical theater part, it was part of conversations we had. I knew that was something else that really interested you. Was there a family member, or was there an environment besides the church that was in the arts that might have said, yeah, this is something you can do? Or was really this because of this exposure in the church format that this was your first introduction to the arts like that?
Weirdly, I guess my brother did musicals in high school, but I don't think I ever saw any of them.
Where are you in your family lineup, by the way?
I am the
youngest. In
terms
of siblings?
I'm the youngest of 3 boys that I was raised with. My father had a family before my mom, so he had... so I have a half-brother and a half-sister who are older as well, but I didn't meet till I was in my 20s.
Okay.
And you only love them half as much.
I don't.
That's what I say to my half sister all the time. She loves it.
They grew up in the South, so things are different.
Yes,
the things. Yes, sure. And how typical is it for the youngest to grow up to be some sort of attention stealing, profession, right?
or gay? You know what? What's funny is that I've done a very, very impractical survey, but most of the people I know who, especially gay men specifically, who are gay men, are most frequently either the youngest of several children or an only child.
Interesting.
Which I've always found. I mean, again, there's no,
which still counts as the youngest
study. Yeah.
Okay.
But I've always found that interesting. And then I was in, I think 5th grade. I was miserable in school growing up because I didn't like sports, and like most places across this country, if you're a little boy who's not into sports, you're kind of messed up. Like there's something wrong with you. And so I had a 5th grade chorus teacher who said, "Hey, I think you might like this. There's a community theater production of Evita, and this was in '86, I think. And she invited me to audition for it, and my mom very happily was driving me back and forth to rehearsals. And that was really, I think, like where I was hook, line, and sinker at that point. But yeah, I was obsessed with it. In fifth grade, we had to do a biographical report on anyone we chose. And all the other boys were like, Babe Ruth, Abraham Lincoln, Ted Williams. And I was like, Eva Perón. And people were like, how do you know who Eva Perón is? I'm like, well, I'm in the musical, you know.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So.
And the fact that your mom was driving you back and forth to the rehearsals, it's nice to hear that there was support from the family to pursue this as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Did you ever?
My mom was great.
Did you ever have the conversation in terms of when it started to become like this might be the thing you are actually going to do for a living, that maybe you should be a doctor or a lawyer instead? Or was it always, you know what, you're happy doing this, you work hard at doing this, and if this is what you want to do, we're going to support you?
That is a really, really great question. I grew up in a single parent family. I saw my dad on the weekends as a kid. They were divorced when I was 4. But come to think of it, no, that never happened. My mom was thrilled with me pursuing this thing that I loved doing. And over time that I think I was pretty good at. High school, I was the lead in all the shows, or not all the shows, but a lot of the shows. And then college, kind of the same thing happened. I went my freshman year and auditioned for Kismet. It was my first big freshman college musical, and I was expecting, I'm going to be the kid in the chorus. That's fine. I'm used to being the lead because I was in high school and I was the lead all the time. But you're like, okay, you're now back to a little fish in a bigger pond. And I got cast as the lead in my first college musical, and I was like, wait a minute. Maybe there's something to this theater.
Yeah.
And after it, after college, I was doing summer stock during my summers in Vermont, doing 20 musicals over the course of 5 weeks.
That's crazy.
Well, not actually 20. It felt like 20. But you're like,
no.
You're in a barn and you're doing show after show and just eating, breathing, sleeping, all these people, and that sounded wrong. Yeah. You're just living theater all the time, and it's the greatest little place to experiment and figure out, what works best, because you're doing so many performances. So you have the audiences there every night, so you get to try things out and see what works and see what doesn't work. And I thought it was the best training I possibly could have had.
So question for that part of your world. So I know from a lot of our conversations with other actors and other performers, so stage fright and nervousness. You're talking about live theater, which is, of course, changes every night, even if it's the same show. What kind of tips could you give to somebody, or how did you deal with that, or did you not deal with it at all? What was your process of getting up in front of an audience every day or every night? Stage fright, nervousness, or none?
That's a great question. So there's, for me, once I kind of put on a mask, when I'm playing the character, it became a lot easier. I was never afraid to be on stage when I was playing a role, because I was, like I said, I was putting on a mask. I was putting on a costume. I was taking on the persona of someone else. What's interesting is when I had to speak, whether it be high school, college, or even now at times, if I have to speak in front of a crowd as myself, as Jamie, it's not terrifying by any means, but I certainly get a lot more nervous than when I'm playing a role, because I don't have that mask, So I actually I train people now. One of my jobs in my real life as an adult is training people how to speak publicly and be effective speakers and how to tell their stories effectively.
Great.
And one of the tips that I mean, there's lots of tips, but There's lots of things you can do to prepare yourself. So if you're afraid, like the thing that we talk about, this thing called fear, which we use as an acronym, false evidence appearing real. So you're not afraid of walking down the street, right? You're not afraid of walking out your door. You're not afraid that a bus is going to come hit you on your street, because you think through all these things in your, subconscious brain, I guess, and you realize, oh, there's no buses on my street, so why would I be afraid of that? But for some reason, when we get on stage, when we get in front of an audience, our bodies tell us that we're supposed to be afraid of something bad happening. But really, what bad can happen when you're on stage in front of someone, right? Are you going to mess up the thing you're going to say? Great. So prepare, practice, get to know it in and out before you get up on stage and say it. Are you afraid you're going to need water, or you're going to dry out? So have a glass of water with you. Not a big deal. People do it all the time. People are afraid of what to do with their hands. Why? I don't know, because we're not afraid of what we do with our hands when we're walking on the street. But suddenly our hands become these, massive weights by our sides when we're on stage.
I've been removing them before I speak publicly. Is that
that's
too much?
Also perfect.
That's overkill?
Or putting
tie
on
them behind his back, yeah.
Or like Hulk gloves are really good.
Hulk gloves,
yeah,
perfect.
Colorful, sparkly gloves also make sense.
Yeah,
but
you need to be taken seriously.
Yeah, there's lots of different tricks. There's lots of different tips on how to handle all those things. But yeah, it's confidence. It's about building up your confidence, realizing that there's nothing bad. Right. There's nothing bad that's going to happen to you when you're on stage.
Yeah, and that's a great answer. You talk about the mask. I've said previously on one of our podcasts, I approach Eric Stuart as another one of my characters, so that that's my way of dealing with the public speaking or whatever. It's that, especially if I'm playing music, it's like, my rock persona is still me. I try to be very honest with that persona, but it's still an exaggerated version of myself. So I'm like, well, this is a character. That's what
it's like everything we put on Instagram, right? That's not real life. It's nice. It's a snapshot.
Yep.
But it's also really important for people to know that the people in your audience, whether it be, anime audience or a live audience, they're rooting for you. They want you to be good. When you go to an audition, the person you're auditioning for wants you to be the solution to their problem.
Exactly.
They want you to be great.
Good point.
So keeping that in mind is important.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and really good advice to a lot of our listeners who are pursuing their passion in the arts as well. So, okay, what you grew up in, was it Massachusetts? Is that where you grew up?
Yeah.
Yep. Wow, I remembered that. So what made you move to New York and get involved in the voice acting part of your career choice?
Well, I moved to New York to do theater. I was hell-bent on working on Broadway and doing musicals. And I did that. And it's funny, my mom used to say, before she passed, she said, you're so brave. You're just so courageous that you kind of dropped everything and you left everyone you knew and went to New York. I mean, there was obviously a little guilt in there too. You left me. But I never thought of it as brave. I thought of it as, oh, this is just the thing I have to do to move my life forward. That's just it. And that's, New York was where you were doing theater. So I moved to New York. I started doing theater immediately. I was doing, some shows would take me out of town, musicals here and there, sometimes tours. And then I was doing a brand new musical that was frankly awful in South Jersey at the Cape May Playhouse in, I guess, 99, I think. That's a long time ago. Where Leah Applebaum was in the show with me. And we got to chatting one night, and she said, oh, you'd be really great at doing voice acting. Have you ever thought of it? And I was like, who hasn't, imagined doing that, right? It's a pretty fun thing. And she passed my name along to someone at sci-fi.com. And I did a Flash cartoon, which also takes us back, with Lisa Ortiz. It was called Barbarian Moron.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was pretty incredible. And that was the first time I saw an animated character with my voice coming out of it, and it was wild. And then on Lisa Ortiz passed my name along to Mike Sinter-Nicholas.
Yep.
I did his very first NYAV Post title, which was Demon Fighter Kocho.
Like we don't know.
I know, right?
A classic.
Huge hit. Huge.
Yes.
I've watched the outtakes from that.
The outtakes. Did you watch?
So
okay, there's on that DVD. Remember those? There was, you could watch along, like the extra special thing they did on the DVD. You could watch the premiere along with the cast.
Oh.
And they took us to a bar on 14th Street and screened it. And so they happened to do this thing the day that I broke up with my boyfriend.
Oh.
And
boy.
so
Oh, wow.
but I had to go, right? I walk in with like 2 Dwayne Reed shopping bags full of snacks for a half-hour show. And during this whole video that they're recording us to put on the DVD, it's just me eating the entire time. Nonstop, just shoving cheese curls in my mouth and Twizzlers. I think if you watch and fast forward, there's like one moment where I offer a Twizzler to someone else and they turn it down. I'm like, sorry, you're lost.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious. I mean, it wasn't at the time, but now looking back, it was hilarious.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. All for the best.
So were you doing a lot of character voices in your performances? Like one of the things that I've talked about as voice actors is that we also don't have the crutch of the physical, so that I could convince you of a great performance in terms of like a guy from New York by just gesturing really well, even if my dialect was not good. But in our voiceover world, you don't have that visual crutch sometimes. You only have what you hear. So I know, because I know you and I know your abilities as a voice actor and your range and the characters you can do. But were you doing that as much with your stage stuff? Were you really getting into dialects and different character voices along with your stage performances?
At times, I can't say it was prevalent, but there were certainly moments where, in college, certainly you're also not hindered by that
right.
physicality either, because everyone is 20 and they're throwing you on stage in multiple kinds of roles.
Right.
I remember playing Soren in The Seagull in college, who's like this very old man, right. And I've never had more fun on stage at that point, and
right.
Because I got to play. I mean, it was a stereotype. I was like, crotchety old guy with a cane, and I got to put on this old man's voice, and it was, I had a blast, and it also like creeped out the rest of my cast members. I would be like, "Come sit on Uncle Soren's lap," and it was horrible and wonderful, and things you could do in the '90s and not now.
Yes.
But it was just it gave me the opportunity to explore not just the physicality of a character, but the voice. And I got to experiment a little bit with that here and there, some accents and summer stock. And certainly I did Big River, which is the Huck Finn musical. I performed it for over a year in different states. And that obviously it's everyone's in the deep South, so you had to put on a deep Southern accent and a lot of very, very broadly painted characters in that as well. So I get to have a lot of fun there as well.
Yeah.
Also,
and also because you're a singer, understanding your pitch and inflection and really using that tool as well, I'm sure made it a little easier to find those things and having a good ear for that. It's interesting because then when it's mentioned to you, hey, have you ever thought about voice acting? It made a little bit more sense as well. Yes, it would be fun to do, but hey, wait a second, that's something that I've been adding to my on stage performance. It's part of the color that I bring to my performance. Why not try to focus on that? So that's great. That's great.
Yeah, that came up too when Mike Sinter-Nicholas was kind of not first launching the studio, but early on. He would primarily look for actors out of the musical theater community. I mean, you're in New York, you have everyone there. I was his casting director for Jungle Emperor Leo, which you might recall
That was one of my favorite projects.
It was so much fun. It was just such a blast. And we were recording, or we were running auditions during when the blackout happened in New York in, I guess, 2003.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And I had just pressed save on someone's audition, and then the lights went out, and I was like, "Oh my god, what did I do?"
The audition was so good.
Yeah, wow.
It was
just
so
blew
great.
everything away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mic drop, right? And then we're out.
Yeah, and my friend Max von Essen, who was a Broadway guy as well, big Broadway Tony nominee for American in Paris, he had left the audition about an hour before and was on the train to Astoria and was stuck. Had to like crawl through the tunnels to get out after the blackout.
Oh my god!
But yeah, awful. But yeah, Michael would always. That's why he asked me to be a casting director, because he knew I could bring in all the musical theater talents to kind of broaden his pool of folks as well.
Well,
sure, yeah. I mean, and I've mentioned this before. I think people who have musical ability pick up dubbing much faster, for obvious reasons, with the timing and getting a performance in a certain phrase. So yeah. Well, you did an excellent job with Jungle Emperor Leo.
Thank you. I think you did as well.
Oh, well. Yeah, that was great because I got to co-direct that. And I know I adapted a lot of it. Or did I most of it? I forget. But it was great because the talent that you helped bring to bear on those mics really fulfilled those roles beautifully.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, so I have another direction of questions. That all sounds like an incredible, positive, inspiring, and energetic part of the story. When faced with the challenges of choosing this as your career, are there any life lessons or things like that? In the trials that you might have had that have either made you want to either hang it up or figure out a way to get through that might inspire some of our listeners to get through some of their tougher moments? And it can be just in life in general.
Yeah, I mean, we all have challenges, right? There's moments where you can't pay your rent, and I mean, there was a certain owner of a certain dub studio that shall remain nameless, who I had to literally go to his house and knock on his door to get paid at one point, because I needed to pay my rent. I was going to get evicted if I didn't pay my rent. Multiple phone calls and emails didn't work. So, terrible things can happen. And it's a very, very tough industry. I'll give the advice that I was given a very long time ago, which is if you can imagine doing anything else at all, do it. It's very hard. But if your heart is in it, and if you can't imagine doing anything else at all, then by all means pursue it. It has to be something you really, really love. It can't be something that you're doing for the money, because as we all know, it's not a big money making industry for the most part, or it is for the less than 1% of all actors out there who are at those elite stages. But do something you love, and the money will follow.
Good. I like that. So one of the other things we all have in common is we're all parents. I'm just curious of the balance in your life between following the things that you're passionate about in the creative side and all of the arts, and also following the things that you're passionate about the family side. I watch from afar through social media, but I will say that you guys seem like great parents. It seems like a loving environment, and I'm just curious how another parent juggles and gets that stuff done.
That's great. I've been a lot of things in my life. I've been an actor. I've been an activist. I do sales. I kind of all over the place, really, with career-wise. There's nothing I like more than being a parent, especially to my wonderful kid. I'm so extraordinarily lucky that I get to be his papa. and then we have these, additional challenges because we're a gay couple, we're a gay family. We call a rainbow family. And my kid is not the same color as we are. He doesn't have the same ethnic background as us. So there's all these little challenges.
And yet you still are able to love him.
Oh, but yeah. I mean,
wow, what a surprise!
That's
right? I know.
Strange, right? So weird. And it's so he has all these things in his life that kind of put him in the other category. He doesn't have his birth parents. He's adopted. His parents are both men, and he's not the same racial makeup as his parents. So our choices are that, our choice is that we have to, be in a place where he is surrounded by people who look like him, that he has mirrors in his life that aren't us, and that he has access to culture that is not just, our culture. We live outside DC now. And I would love to move back to New England, and be near people and spaces that I know and grew up with. But I can't do that. I can't do that because I can't move him to a place where he's going to be the only child that's not white. So as far as juggling things, I mean, location is a big thing for us. So being here is important. And then just making sure that your kid can be part of what you do. My son came with me to cons early on, before the pandemic. He was an infant, and I'd throw him on stage with me, and he would love it. I'm not really throw him on stage with me, but introduce him, carry him around.
Yes,
it was fun. And now, I get to show him, Pokemon and whatever else I was in. And he's a little enamored by the fact that, he hears Papa's voice coming out of the TV.
Yeah.
And I love that. So I think the most important thing for me is making sure that everything is kind of integrated and that my career is something that includes him and not something that Papa just does without him. Because it's a fun career.
No, that's great. That's great. I mean, as an adopted kid myself, I know that love is the people around you. It doesn't have to be blood.
Well, that's really wonderful that you're able to recognize your son's needs and are willing to sacrifice so much in terms of making sure that he grows up with the best possible environment for him. And I know for myself that my mom had a lot on her shoulders and didn't really have the ability to let work not interfere, but that you're even sensitive to that, I think, is a great thing. And I know a lot of kids feel like their parents are behind a wall of their parents' career, from time to time.
Yeah, we're very fortunate in that. Because I know there's a lot of parents who they don't have a choice. I just happen to be in a career, and my husband happens to be in a career that allows us to have a real work-life balance, which most parents out there cannot have, just due to the way our society
circumstance
set up.
Or
right.
Well, with that, I think it would be a great time to bring part one of this conversation to a close, and for next time, let's talk about what's up with you now and what you see ahead of you, and those kinds of things, and maybe also talk a little bit more about some of the struggles along the way.
That sounds great.
All right. Well, Jamie, thanks for joining us, and Eric, thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
And thanks to everyone else who has joined us on this conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what you're dealt. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to The Heart of the Cards with Dan Green and Eric Stuart. We hope this conversation in some way spoke to you. Whatever your journey, we look forward to crossing paths again in the next episode. This is Veronica Taylor, and on behalf of Andromeda Productions, we wish you well.
Andromeda, always a sound choice.